He doesn't really care if they live or die, Alaina said as she looked off to the side with yellow eyes that matched her father's. I think I'm the only one he actually feeds. If they die, he won't be able to do more experiments, said Yalusa. Why would he let them die? Alaina let go of the bars of the cage and fell backwards. Her cage was bigger than the other cages, and she was able to lay down and stretch out as much as the chains on her wrists and ankles would allow. He feels if the host is close to death, it's weaker and easier to manipulate with magic. He refers to them as hosts, asked Gilden. This is mostly for hypnosis testing, correct? Not just hypnosis, silly. Alaina raised her head only. He's doing a whole bunch of tests. Gilden. Sagi was now standing further back from the group. Taur stood next to her. Come here for a sec. Sagi waved him over. She's giving us some information. I don't know how good or true it is. Gilden spoke as Yalusa and Enden joined them. You and Enden stay and get as much information out of her as possible. Yalusa, Taur, and I will go deeper and see what we can find, said Sagi. Okay, go on. Gilden nodded. Enden and I will do our best. Sagi, Yalusa, and Taur continued on. Gilden and Enden walked back up to Alaina's cage. She sat back up and crawled to the front of the cage again. Hi, I'm Alaina, she said once more. Yes, we were just talking. My name is... Gilden, said Alaina. I heard you talking. Just now? Asked Gilden. Outside, said Alaina. You could hear us speaking all the way out there. Gilden turned to look at Enden as he spoke, returned his gaze to Alaina shortly after. How is your hearing that good? Not just outside the hut, clarified Alaina. All the way out beyond the barrier, she smiled innocently. Mavis has run a few tests on me too. He thinks I'm weird because my senses are so good. And what did you hear us discussing? Asked Gilden. Stuff, said Alaina. She shyly crawled to the back of the cage. I can't remember it all. Do you remember any of it? Asked Enden. Alaina used the bars of the back of the cage to pull herself to her feet. She wasn't wearing a cloak like the other prisoners. Instead, she had on a brown tunic with white shorts that were covered in dirt. She had no shoes on, and her hair was short, shaggy, and a mix of white and black. She tugged on the chains on her wrists as she made her way to the middle of the cage. She raised both of her index fingers in excitement as a big smile appeared on her face. I know. She jumped up and down, then pointed at Gilden. Transmography. Gilden's eyes widened in anticipation that Alaina was casting a spell on him, but nothing happened. Instead, it was Alaina who transformed into a small, blue-furred cat. She meowed a few times as she slowly pranced around her cage. The chains on her wrists and ankles were now on the ground. Extraordinary, said Gilden. The spell is lasting much longer than normal. Nothing normal about this, said Enden. Right? added Alaina. Gilden's eyes opened in shock. You can speak in the transformation, he shouted. This is normal, said Alaina in her cat form. She moved to the front of the cage and nuzzled one of the bars. Did you know that there are cat people on the eastern half of Novessa? I heard the man with the telescope telling Daddy. While Gilden and Enden continued to speak to Alaina, Sagi, Yalusa, and Taur continued into the hut. The hut was not the size it appeared to be from the outside as the group traveled on for a few more minutes. The walls continued to be lined with prisoners, each of which repeated a different phrase over and over. At the end of the hut was a large table. Potions were on shelves to the right of the table, and numerous books were opened on top of it. This must be where Mavis does most of his experimenting. Sagi walked up to the table and noticed some of the magical spheres Mavis had been stealing from the Welton Company. He has certainly been busy, added Yalusa. We might be able to find some answers in these books. Look at this. Yalusa presented the book on top of the pile to Sagi and Taur. An image in the book showed two bodies side by side with a top-down view as they were displayed on tables. A double-sided arrow that Mavis added to the image connected the two heads of the bodies. What is this? Asked Taur. Are those two bodies meant to be connected somehow? I think the image is showing a transfer, added Sagi. Person in this body going into the other body. Is that even possible? Taur leaned over to get a closer look at the writing. His memory was coming back, but he was still having trouble reading. According to the book, Yalusa turned it back around so she could read it. This has been attempted on Earth hundreds of years ago. Body transferring? Sagi crossed her arms. That doesn't seem right. We know Earth was even farther advanced than us when it came to magic. It's why they were able to expand the way they did. Yalusa reminded Sagi. Something like this could totally be possible on Earth. What else does it say? Sagi walked around to Yalusa's side so she could also read the pages. They referred to it as soul transferring, and it was only attempted one time that's on record. a really long time ago and they weren't able to finish the procedure, but statistically it should have worked. Yalusa shook her head. Do you think Mavis is trying to possess another body? He's one of the strongest magic users on Novessa already, isn't he? Asked Taur. Why would he want to be in another body? Yalusa put the book back on the table and the three of them stood over it. That depends. If he's able to willingly jump from host to host, that could give him a whole new level of power. If he could jump into Taur with the magical energy his body is radiating, it could be catastrophic. Or he could impersonate others to get what he wants, suggested Sagi. Imagine if he took control of Mr. Welton. He could practically control the entire western half of Novessa and everyone wouldn't even know it was him calling the shots. I didn't even think of that, said Yalusa. That's a scary thought. We should get this information back to Kore, suggested Taur. Who is Kore? That's the second time you've mentioned her, said Yalusa. I'm assuming she's on our side. She's a human detective I met in Seva. She's also hunting Mavis, explained Sagi. She's a friend and she has connections to the guard. I don't think we should involve the guard in this, replied Yalusa. Though your friend being a detective would make solving some of these mysteries a bit easier. We can find Kore and fill her in. You should get the rest of this information to the king and queen, suggested Sagi. Then once I have Kore with us, we can return and compare information. Might not be ready to go home just yet, said Gilden as he and his brother rejoined the group. Enden and I found out where Mavis is right now, and he's not far from here. If he's coming back, we need to leave, Sagi said. I had something else in mind, said Gilden. We should go see what he's doing. Yalusa was still staring at the book with the image of the body transfer. Where did Alaina say he was? Very close to the edge, just a bit east of our location, said Gilden. What do you think? Yalusa took her focus off the book and turned around. Let's see what he's up to. A few molecular displacements later, the group made their way east along the edge, leaving Mavis's hut and Alaina behind them. Gilden shared with the others the things Alaina was saying about the eastern half of Novessa, and Yalusa shared with Gilden and Enden their findings about the body transferring. As they continued east, they accidentally passed through yet another barrier. I didn't even sense this one, Gilden said with a look of shock on his face. Yalusa put her arms out to make sure no one else moved. If Mavis is here, he definitely felt us come in. There is a rock over there, come on. Sagi moved quickly to a large rock and waved the others over. The group hid behind it, though the rock barely blocked Taur and Enden. If he sensed us, this rock isn't going to do anything, Gilden pointed out. Let's just hope he's distracted, said Yalusa. Look. Sagi peeked over the rock. Far from where they were hiding was a large number of Welton Company employees gathered. Each one was wearing a green jumpsuit with the Welton Company logo on it. In front of them was a large metal staircase leading to a metal platform. On the platform stood a scientist, Mr. Welton, and Mavis. Mr. Welton was doing most of the talking as he pointed out into the emptiness of space in front of them. At the angle that Sagi could see from, you could see a long metal bridge connected to the platform and disappearing into the space in front of the platform. Sagi hid back down behind the rock. Are Mr. Welton and Mavis working together? That's what it looks like, said Taur. They're keeping this hidden from the rest of Novessa, added Yalusa. That bridge looks complete to me. Impossible with the barrier still up, said Gilden. There's no way they got through that already. And then tapped Gilden on the shoulder. I wouldn't be so sure. Gilden got back up enough to peer over the rock. He hadn't noticed it before as he was looking at everything else, but there was a large hole in the barrier where the bridge was extending. I can't believe he found a way through the barrier that quickly. They can get to the eastern half, added Enden. This is incredible. Incredibly frightening, added Sagi. Mr. Welton and Mavis are leading the charge to the other side of Novessa. There's nothing good that could come from this. None of this adds up, said Taur. Mavis has been stealing from the Welton Company. If Mr. Welton was working with him, why wouldn't he just give Mavis what he wants? Especially if they're working toward the same goal. Maybe they're not, said Yalusa. Maybe they're just using each other to get to the other side. But their plans once they get there are different. There's no way for us to know the whole story. Get down, said Taur. They finished talking and Mavis is coming this way. The group sat in silence behind the rock and shimmied over so that Mavis would be passing them on an angle where he wouldn't be able to see them. Mavis walked over to the barrier alone as the group could only hear one set of footsteps. They heard Mavis humming a tune, and as he grew closer to the barrier, he began to sing softly to himself. Running out of time, there's nothing on my mind because it's broken, went the words of the song, appropriate after what they had just seen. Mavis stopped just as he reached the barrier and looked in the direction of the rock. He stared at it for a few moments. Somehow Taur and Enden managed to fit behind the large rock enough so that no part of them was sticking out. Mavis finished the lyrics he was singing as he forced an opening in the barrier. And I don't know where I'm going. Normally once through the barrier you could still see someone outside of it as Gilden saw Sagi earlier. However, the moment Mavis stepped out of the barrier, he vanished. Should we go question one of the Welton Company's members? Asked Enden. Too risky, replied Gilden. Agreed, said Yalusa. We should report back to the king and queen and see how they want to proceed. Do you need anything else from me and Taur? Asked Sagi. Nothing else on our end. Go find your human detective friend. What was her name again? Kore, answered Taur. Ah, yes, Yalusa nodded. Go get her. We will definitely need her help.